Hello everyone, welcome to MBBS classes. Myself Dr. Hanifa. Today in this video I'll be talking on Ludwig's angina. Ludwig's angina, it is a rapidly spreading inflammation, cellulitis of odontogenic origin that involves the sublingual, submental and the submandibular space bilaterally. This disease is named after Sir Wilhelm Friedrich von Ludwig because it was he who described this disease in the year 1836 as a fast spreading fatal infection that involves the connective tissues of the neck and the floor of the mouth. In the past days, it was also known as morbus strangularis, and sometimes few people they also used to call it as angina maligna. So we know that this Ludwig angina, it is a bilateral infection of the three primary spaces of the facial region. Those three primary spaces of the facial region are: first is submandibular space, second is sublingual space, and the third is the submental space. Okay, when these three primary spaces are involved bilaterally, then only this disease is called as Ludwig's angina. So now I will go very briefly about these spaces. For details about these deep neck spaces, kindly go through our video on the anatomy of deep neck space part 2. So here you can see there are two figures. Okay, this is the figure number 1. It is the cross section of the face showing the contents of the submandibular region, sublingual region and the submental region. And again in the figure 2, this is showing these three spaces and the intercommunication between these spaces, and this picture is taken from below the hyoid. So this is the mandible and this is the hyoid bone. It looks like as if the picture is taken from inferiorly. So here you can say that the first space to be involved in the Ludwig's angina is the submandibular space. Okay, so and this submandibular space is interrelated, or you can say it communicates with the sublingual and the submental space. This submandibular space, it extends from the hyoid bone up to the mandible. Here you can see that this is the mandible, and in the mandible, the submandibular, the upper limit is the mylohyoid line on which is situated on the medial surface of the mandible. So here you can say this is the mylohyoid muscle and this is our submandibular space. And this submandibular space, it is the most inferiorly located suprahyoid neck space, and it is situated from or you can say it extends from the hyoid to the mandible and between the two bellies of the digastric, that is the anterior belly of the digastric and the posterior belly of the digastric. And if you remember, it contains the superficial part of the submandibular gland. Now you can see here in Ludwig's angina, the infection of the lower molars is the hallmark cause. Okay, so if you see here, this is the second and the third mandibular molars. If you see here, they are situated, the roots of these second and the third mandibular molars, they are situated below the mylohyoid line of the mandible. So if there is any infection of these mandibular second and the third molars, definitely it is going to give rise to the infection of the submandibular space. And since you know that the submandibular space, it communicates with the sublingual space. So this is the sublingual space. It is situated above the mylohyoid muscle, and this submandibular space, it communicates with the sublingual space behind the posterior margin of the mylohyoid muscle. So any infection which begins and from this area, because the Ludwig's angina in majority of the cases it is of odontogenic origin, so any infection of this area, definitely it is going to involve the sublingual space, and later on it can also involve the submental space. So this is how the infection from one primary space can involve the other primary spaces. This Ludwig's angina, it is not restricted to any particular age. It can affect both children and adults. Now, if we see the source of infection, in 90% of the patients, it is seen to be due to the infection of the roots of the second and the third mandibular molars. The reason is because the apex of these roots, it extends below the mylohyoid line, which is our superior limit of the submandibular space. Now, you must also remember some other uncommon causes which might sometimes lead to Ludwig's angina. It is seen that it can also occur following injury or laceration to the floor of the mouth, following mandibular fractures, if there is any tongue injury, osteomyelitis, if there was any history of traumatic intubation or submandibular silodinitis, and sometimes very rarely following infected thyroglossal cyst. But still, till date also the dental cause is the most common cause of Ludwig's angina. Now coming to the predisposing factors, although this disease is seen in the immunocompetent persons in majority of the cases, but there are certain group of people with some predisposing factors that are more prone to develop. So among this are the people who are diabetic, having a history of oral malignancy, suffering from dental caries, alcoholism, malnutrition and immunocompromised status can be a predisposing factor for development of these infection. Now coming into the microbiology, it is seen that it is both aerobic and the anaerobic organisms are associated. Now according to the literature, the commonly isolated organisms which are found to be associated with the Ludwig's angina are seen to be Streptococcus viridis, Staphylococcus aureus, Enterococcus, E. coli, bacteroids and Pseudomonas. Now let's see how they present. The patient of Ludwig's angina, it has a very classical presentation. They present as swelling of the submandibular region. So if you see here this clinical picture, this is a side view of a patient where you can see that there is a swelling of the submandibular region, and the swelling, it lies superior to the hyoid bone, because the spaces which are involved in the Ludwig's angina, they are suprahyoid, primary spaces of the face. Now since there is involvement of the floor of the mouth, the patient will not be able to swallow and they will have drooling of saliva because they are not able to swallow their own saliva also. As you can see here, this patient, this is the floor of the mouth, and in this case we cannot see the tongue because the tongue is pushed up, and here you can see that there is a tracheostomy, a part of the picture is only seen, and the patient had presented with the severe stridor, and because of this the patient, to secure the airway, the tracheostomy was done in this case. Now among the other symptoms of the Ludwig's angina, they may present to you not as swelling or inability to swallow, they may present as respiratory symptoms like tachypnea and dyspnea. And if any patient is presenting as stridor in Ludwig's angina, suggestive of impending airway compromise, and which results as a combined effect of edema of the floor of the mouth, plus what happens, because of the edema of the floor of the mouth, the tongue is pushed backwards and upwards. Secondly, sometimes it may be aggravated when the infection, it spreads to the larynx, which results in laryngeal edema. If any patient of Ludwig's angina is having severe trismus, this means that in that case the infection has spread from the primary spaces of mandible to the secondary space of the mandible. That means apart from the primary spaces, that is the submandibular, sublingual and the submental, if a patient is having trismus, it means that the patient might be having involvement of pterygomandibular space or the medial pterygoid space. This is the medial pterygoid space, and in that case when the secondary spaces are involved, they may have a swelling over the posterior inferior portion of the face, which means it is suggestive of involvement of the mesenteric space. So this is the masseter muscle and this is the mesenteric space. So if you see here, this patient is having involvement of the submandibular. Here you can see that there is a shiny skin over the side of the face, and this patient had Ludwig's angina, which resulted in the spread of infection to the mesenteric space also. This patient needed tracheostomy because he presented with stridor. Now coming to the evaluation part. So whenever you are getting a case of Ludwig's angina, always try to elicit the onset and the duration of symptoms. Take a good history of diseases of the teeth, ear, nose, or any history of recent dental workup. Blood investigations are sent, but they contribute very little in the diagnosis. You may get leukocytosis, send for serum electrolytes and check the sugar status. In that case, always do a complete head and neck examination and the microbiological investigations. The culture and sensitivity is sent for the pus after it is drained. Now when we examine the patient will be having fever. Then on oral examination you will see that there will be gross swelling of the floor of the mouth, elevation and displacement of the tongue. Then classically the type of induration of the floor of the mouth is described in literature as the woody induration. Then in the submandibular region, when you palpate, you will get a tense brawny induration of the submandibular and the submental region. Presence of strabismus, definitely it indicates involvement of the medial pterygoid space, and the patient might have some stridor and respiratory obstruction, and we have to proceed accordingly. Now there is definitely a very good role of radiology in these cases. So plain x-ray of the jaw, neck and chest should always be advised because it is an inexpensive method, or you can say a tool of diagnosing. It's rapid and it is widely available. So even in places where the CT scan facility is not available, in that case at least we can ask for the plain x-ray of the jaw, neck and the chest. Then radiography of the jaw, it helps us to readily identify the dental source of infection. Chest radiography is indicated especially if when a patient is presenting to you with the dyspnea and the tachycardia, and ultimately the main radiological investigation which helps us to find out the different spaces, neck spaces involved, is the CT scan of the neck with the contrast. This is the excellent modality for the deep neck space infections. So here you can see that here we can see the two pictures. This is the coronal and this is the sagittal section. Here you can see, first of all, if you I'll show you that this is a tracheostomy tube of the same patient, and here you can see that there is an involvement of the floor of the mouth with the multiple air foci, and the mesenteric space is also involved. Now coming to the management part. Management has a medical and surgical combined role. Under the medical management, the first and foremost thing to be secured is the airway. It is of prime importance, and the safest method to secure the airway is via awake fiber optic intubation, but there are certain other methods of securing the airway. These in literature it is said that we can also go for blind nasotracheal intubation, retrograde intubation and tracheostomy. Next comes under the medical management is the fluid resuscitation. It is necessary in cases in those patients having significant dysphagia who are not able to eat for longer duration of time, trismus and dehydration. And it is also seen that the adequate fluid resuscitation, it is seen to reduce the severity of the anesthesia related hypertension. Next, patients are advised broad spectrum antibiotics, and the choice of antibiotic is dictated by the future culture and sensitivity report of the pus drained. Now coming to the surgical management, establishment of the airway along with the incision and drainage is the main surgical management of the disease. And Ludwig's angina is very different from the other head and neck deep neck space infection. It is here the incision and drainage is recommended even in the absence of an abscess. So remember, even if there is in the CT scan, if we see that the patient is not having any abscess formation, it is still in the stage of cellulitis. In that case also the incision and drainage is advised. So the incision is made, horizontal incision is made in the submental area. The fascial muscles layers and the muscles are separated in the midline. The wound is irrigated and it is packed with the iodoform gauze. And once the edema and the infection resolves, then if there is any tracheostomy, it can be closed later on. Coming to the complications, in general, the deep head and neck spaces, we have already discussed the complications already in the class on retropharyngeal abscess. Now, the complications are airway obstruction, septicemia. When it involves the other parapharyngeal spaces and all, it can lead to neuropathy, carotid artery aneurysm, rupture, then jugular venous thrombosis. This syndrome is called the Lemierre syndrome. It is seen that it can also lead to cavernous sinus thrombosis, mediastinitis. Once the infection, it tracks down into the posterior mediastinum, and sometimes it can also lead to necrotizing fasciitis. So for today's class, the take home message is, if the disease is diagnosed and if the patient attends hospital in proper time, with the use of appropriate broad spectrum antibiotics, aggressive surgical drainage and adequate supportive care, there is a good outcome in the management of the Ludwig's angina. With this, I come to an end of this video. Thank you for watching this video.